Welcome back to the Deep Dive. Today we're tackling a topic that it really carries an immense weight for anyone who drives, parents, or just lives in a community with kids. We're talking about child traffic safety.
And the reality is, it's pretty stark. I was looking at the data from the World Health Organization, the WHO, and it lists road traffic injuries as one of the leading global causes of death for children aged 5 to 14.
That's the serious, undeniable reality we're stepping into.
It is, and that's precisely why this deep dive is so crucial. We're not here just to, repeat the usual safety slogans. Our mission is to really go beyond that, to extract the key insights from our sources and understand why. Why are children so uniquely vulnerable near roads?
Right.
And from there, we can distill the most actionable strategies for drivers, for parents, and for communities.
Okay, let's unpack this because the dangers are a complex mix. It's behavior, it's the environment, it's infrastructure. It's not just one single failure point. It's more of a
Collision of factors.
Exactly, a collision of factors. So let's start with the young pedestrians themselves. I think we often forget that expecting a 7-year-old to navigate traffic is like asking them to do complex mental math.
That's the core issue right there. We have to stop viewing children as just small adults. There are significant physical and cognitive gaps that put them at risk.
So starting with the physical?
Well, their size. They're just physically smaller, which means they're so easily obstructed. Hidden behind a parked SUV, a garbage bin, they can be virtually invisible.
But the visibility problem goes both ways, doesn't it? It's not just that drivers can't see the child.
Absolutely. This is a critical insight from our sources in developmental psychology. Children tend to have a much more narrow focus. Their peripheral vision isn't fully developed yet.
So they might look left and right, but they could totally miss a car that's, say, turning the corner just outside that narrow frame of vision.
Exactly. And you add to that the mental math problem you mentioned, judging the speed and the distance of an oncoming car. That requires really sophisticated spatial awareness.
Skills that a child under 9 or 10 just hasn't mastered.
Not at all. They might see a car a block away and think, oh, I have plenty of time, not realizing that car's moving at 40 miles per hour. Or even worse, accelerating.
And we can't ignore the impulsivity factor.
Oh, the spontaneous dash.
Yeah, chasing a ball, seeing a friend across the street. These are sudden, unpredictable movements.
Unpredictable. And even the most alert driver can struggle to react to that. It's also compounded by something called acoustic location.
Meaning?
Even if they hear a horn or an engine, a young child often struggles to pinpoint where that sound is coming from.
So they hear danger, but they might look the wrong way.
Precisely. You layer all of that together, the physical, the cognitive, and you start to see why residential areas and school zones are these constant high-risk environments.
So let's talk about those environmental conditions. The data shows the highest concentration of these incidents. When and where?
The timing is, unfortunately, very predictable. Most accidents happen in the late afternoon and evening hours.
The convergence point.
It's the convergence point. Kids are coming home from school, drivers are tired from work, and crucially, visibility is dropping, especially at dusk.
And you add in driver distraction.
Yeah.
Checking a phone, messing with the console.
And those low visibility hours become the most dangerous period of the day.
Okay, so moving from analyzing the risk to preparing for independence. This is the part I know our listeners are really curious about. What's the consensus on the age? The age for a child to cross the road independently?
Right, the $10,000 question. And the guideline from organizations like the NHTSA or Safe Kids Worldwide, it's really consistent. They say children under 10 years old should not be crossing the road alone.
Under 10.
Yeah. And that's not an arbitrary number. It's the age where most kids start to develop the judgment and the sustained attention they need to manage a complex traffic environment.
It's where that mental math ability we discussed finally starts to click.
Exactly. They can start to do those dual tasks, watch for traffic, and remember the rules and assess speed all at once. But, and this is a huge but, it's a guideline, parents have to do a real readiness check.
So can they follow directions consistently? Can they stay focused?
Do they understand the rules apply even when they're excited or in a hurry? If the answer is no to any of those, they need more supervision.
Let's dive into the practical teaching strategies then. What does active teaching look like?
Well, the first step is just modeling. It's foundational. If you jaywalk, you're teaching them that the rules are optional.
Do as I say, not as I do.
Right, so you have to be consistent. But for active teaching, you need to make the process external and audible.
What do you mean by external?
When you teach the stop, look, and listen rule, make them say it out loud. Have them stop right at the curb and verbalize it. Left, checking for cars. Right, checking for cars, and left again.
Oh, that's interesting. So the verbalization forces them to actually do the check, to sweep their attention.
It reinforces the process. And then once they decide to cross, what's the technique?
Speed or stability.
Stability.
Yeah.
And predictability. They have to walk, not run.
Because running
Increases the chance of tripping, of rushing their judgment, and it's a sudden movement drivers don't expect. They need to cross deliberately and keep looking and listening the whole way.
and no distractions, no phones, no loud music.
Zero distractions.
As kids get older, the risk shifts, right? From being pedestrians to being on bikes or scooters.
Which is a whole other level of risk. They're moving faster, they're more unstable.
What are the absolute non-negotiables for biking?
Two things: equipment and direction. First, a properly fitted helmet. It's just not optional. Second, directionality. The most dangerous mistake kids make is riding against traffic.
Even though it feels safer to see the cars coming at you.
It feels safer, but it's not. It dramatically reduces reaction time for both the rider and the driver. They must ride on the right side of the road with the flow of traffic.
And what about busy intersections?
Get off the bike, walk it across. They need to revert to being a pedestrian where the situation is too complex.
Okay, this is where the conversation gets really interesting, I think. This systemic shift. Technology. It's not just about warnings anymore. It's moving into active intervention.
That's the most exciting development. We're seeing technology that can actually compensate for human error.
For both the driver and the child.
Yes. In cars, you have automatic emergency braking AEB paired with pedestrian detection. These systems use radar and cameras, and they can automatically apply the brakes if a child darts out.
But I have to ask about the reliability there. How good are these sensors with a small, fast-moving object, like a kid on a scooter?
That's a critical question. In early versions, they did struggle, especially in low light. But the modern systems are significantly better. They might not always guarantee a full stop from high speeds, but at typical residential speeds. They can buy those critical milliseconds needed to prevent or at least lessen the severity of a collision.
And beyond the car itself, what about tech for parents?
Parental tech is all about awareness. Things like child GPS trackers and apps are huge now.
And they allow for geofencing.
Exactly. You can draw a digital boundary around the safe route to school. If your child leaves that zone, you get an instant alert.
That's a safety net that still allows for independence.
It is. And then you have infrastructure tech, like smart crosswalks,
Which are basically,
an active warning system. They use sensors to detect a pedestrian, which then triggers flashing lights embedded in the road. They force drivers to pay attention.
I've also seen our sources mention VR simulations for this.
Yes, virtual reality. It's a breakthrough for education. It lets kids practice navigating a busy intersection, judging speed, all in a place where failure has zero physical consequence.
Which brings us to the community level. Because even with the best tech and teaching, the infrastructure has to support safety.
Precisely. We're talking about traffic calming, the physical act of forcing drivers to slow down.
Not just signs.
No, it's about changing the architecture of the street itself. Things like speed bumps, raised crosswalks.
Raised crosswalks, which both slow the car and make the pedestrian more visible.
Yes. And things like road diets, where you reduce traffic lanes to make room for wider sidewalks and bike lanes.
But doesn't that often lead to pushback? You know, from communities who feel like they're being slowed down.
That tension is absolutely real. It's a policy balancing act. But the data, it overwhelmingly supports these measures in high pedestrian zones.
It just forces drivers to be more focused.
It does. And a few extra seconds of drive time is a tiny price to pay for a huge drop in severe injuries.
And finally, this idea of safe routes to school.
It's an integrated plan. It's the city ensuring there are clear crosswalks and pathways. It's schools coordinating drop-off and pickup zones to reduce that morning and afternoon chaos. So to synthesize this whole deep dive, protecting kids near roads, it really requires action on three fronts. First, understanding their cognitive limits. Second, consistent, high-quality education and supervision, especially before age 10. And third, systemic changes through technology and smart infrastructure. It is a shared responsibility.
We've covered the practical teaching steps, the cognitive milestones for independence, and the powerful systemic changes that are coming into play. But here's the final provocative thought we want to leave you with. We've seen how technology and infrastructure are getting better at shielding children from the consequences of their own judgment. We use geofencing, automatic braking, speed bumps, all to create a safer external world. But how do we balance these external safety nets with making sure that children develop the internal confidence and the critical decision-making skills they need? skills for a world that won't always be perfectly optimized for their protection. How do we facilitate safety without inhibiting the development of competence? Think about that tension the next time you decide whether to hold their hand or to watch them walk ahead.
Please like, subscribe, and get notified.